The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before the Concordat flagship Eternal Dawn. Stars twinkled like distant jewels against the velvet darkness, their light barely touching the polished hull of the massive vessel. In the command center, High Admiral Taiho stood with perfect posture, his golden uniform catching occasional glimmers from the bridge's soft lighting. His weathered face showed the experience of countless space campaigns, yet today's mission had him slightly on edge. The ship's quantum sensors had detected something unusual, energy patterns that shouldn't exist in this supposedly primitive sector. The readings came from a yellow star system that the Concordat had long ignored, considering it too insignificant for their mighty empire's attention. "Admiral, preliminary scans of the system are complete," announced Lieutenant Kang, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "We're detecting artificial structures on the third and fourth planets, as well as their natural satellite." Taiho nodded thoughtfully. The Concordat's database had classified this species, humans, they called themselves, as barely capable of reaching their own moon. Yet something about the energy signatures suggested more sophisticated technology than expected. Commander Sunmai approached the Admiral's position, her steps quick but measured. She carried a data tablet, its screen displaying ancient symbols that made Taiho's eyes narrow. "Sir, I believe you need to see this immediately," she said, her voice carrying an unusual note of worry. "Speak freely, Commander," Taiho replied, taking the tablet from her hands. "The markers we detected at the edge of this system, they're identical to the precursor warnings we found in the Centauri system last year. The patterns match perfectly." Sunmi zoomed in on specific sections of the data, highlighting the similarities. Taiho felt a slight chill run down his spine, but quickly dismissed it. The Concordat had ruled over 300 species across 12,000 star systems for millennia. They had crushed empires, subjugated hostile races, and brought their version of order to the galaxy. What could one primitive species possibly do against such power? "Sir," Sunmai persisted, "the last time we ignored precursor warnings was a completely different situation." Taiho cut her off with a wave of his hand. "The Centauri incident involved an ancient defense system. These humans barely have fusion power. Their ships still use chemical propulsion." The bridge crew continued their work, but Taiho noticed how they listened intently to the conversation. The precursors were legendary, their artifacts and warnings treated with almost religious reverence by many species. But Taiho had built his career on rational decisions, not ancient superstitions. "Launch our scout drones," he ordered. "Standard first contact protocols. Let's see how they react to our presence." The drones shot out from the Eternal Dawn's launch bays, their sleek forms disappearing into the darkness. Minutes passed as they approached Mars, the red planet growing larger on the main view screen. "Sir," Lieutenant Kang's voice carried surprise, "I'm detecting movement from the Martian surface, multiple objects rising to intercept our drones." Taiho leaned forward, interest piqued. "Show me." The screen shifted to show several vessels launching from hidden bases on Mars' surface. They were crewed by Concordat standards. Blocky, utilitarian designs that suggested function over form. But their response time was impressive for a supposedly primitive race. "They're hailing us," Sunmai reported. "Basic radio waves, just as our intelligence suggested they would use." "Put them through," Taiho commanded, straightening his already perfect posture. The human's first glimpse of the Concordat should be appropriately impressive. The voice that came through the speakers used a simple language the Concordat's universal translators easily decoded. "Unknown vessels, you have entered restricted space. Please identify yourselves." Taiho allowed himself a small smile. Their response was both predictable and amusing. Acting tough while using such primitive communication methods. He nodded to Sunmai, who activated the standard first contact message. "People of Earth and Mars." Taiho's translated voice boomed across space. "I am High Admiral Taiho of the Galactic Concordat. Your system has been selected for evaluation and potential integration into our empire. Prepare for detailed scanning of your civilization. The response came quickly, but not from the Martian vessels. Instead, it originated from somewhere deep in space behind the Concordat fleet. Admiral Tahoe, a calm voice replied, using perfect Concordat standard language. Perhaps you should have paid more attention to those warning markers. Tahoe's blood ran cold as new energy signatures began appearing all around his fleet. Signatures that hadn't been there seconds before. The primitive vessels near Mars had been a distraction. Somehow, they had completely surrounded the Concordat ships without being detected. Sun's face had gone pale as she stared at her readings. Sir, those energy signatures, they're identical to precursor technology. The Admiral slowly realized that the humans hadn't been primitive at all. They had been waiting, and the Concordat had just walked straight into their trap. The grand chambers of the Concordat Strategic Command stretched impossibly high, their crystal walls catching and reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. The council members sat in their elevated seats, arranged in concentric circles that rose toward the domed ceiling. Their faces showed varying degrees of interest and boredom as General Jinwoo stood before them, his military uniform crisp and immaculate. Holographic displays filled the air around him, showing images of Earth and its civilization. Primitive automobiles crawled along crowded streets. Simple rockets pushed their way into the planet's atmosphere. Space stations orbited slowly, their solar panels reaching out like fragile wings. As you can see, Jinwoo said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber, their technology is remarkably basic. They still rely on fossil fuels for most of their energy needs. Their space presence is limited to their own solar system, and even then they struggle to maintain permanent bases on their moon and Mars. He gestured, and the displays shifted to show military installations. Tanks rolled across desert landscapes, ships moved through oceans, and aircraft soared through clouds. To the council members, used to quantum drives and gravity weapons, these machines looked like children's toys. Their military capabilities are equally primitive. Jinwoo continued. They still use chemical explosives and kinetic weapons. Their most advanced missiles can barely reach orbital velocity. According to our classification system, they are firmly in Category 4, a pre-galactic civilization, ripe for integration into the Concordat. Defense Minister Yunji nodded approvingly from her seat. She had been pushing for rapid expansion of Concordat territory, and Earth seemed like an easy target. What resistance can we expect? She asked, already thinking about resource allocation. Minimal, Jinwoo replied confidently. 1 battle group should be more than sufficient. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields, and their detection systems are too primitive to track our stealth vessels. We could have the planet under control within days. Counselor Hae-Newell, her face lined with age and wisdom, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She ran her fingers across the ancient stone tablet that never left her side, a habit she had developed over her centuries of service. The tablet's surface was covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and change in the light. Perhaps, she said softly, but her voice carried authority that made others listen. We should consider the warnings more carefully. The precursor markers we found speak of world shapers and star children. These terms have appeared before, always in connection with species that. Superstition. Yunji interrupted sharply, rising from her seat. With respect, Counselor, we cannot base military decisions on ancient folklore. The precursors vanished millennia ago. Their warnings are as outdated as their technology. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some council members nodded in agreement with Yunji, while others looked uncertain. The precursors were a controversial topic. Their artifacts and warnings had proven deadly accurate in some cases, yet completely irrelevant in others. The markers specifically mentioned this star system. Hae-Newell persisted. They were placed there deliberately, at great expense of energy and resources. Why would the precursors do that if? The same markers appear in dozens of systems, Yunji countered, many of which we have successfully integrated into the Concordat. General Jinwoo, please continue with the invasion planning. Jin Woo nodded and brought up new displays showing fleet formations and attack vectors. But as he spoke, He Newell studied the images of Earth with growing concern. Something about the humans' development pattern seemed odd to her experienced eyes. Their advancement appeared too regular, too measured, as if they were deliberately maintaining an appearance of steady but slow progress. The invasion fleet can be ready within 30 standard days, Jin Woo concluded. We recommend a standard 3-wave approach. First, we demonstrate our power by neutralizing their major military installations. Then, we offer them a chance to surrender. Finally, if needed, we proceed with full planetary subjugation. The Council voted overwhelmingly in favor of the invasion plan. Only He Newell and a few of the older members opposed it. As the chamber began to empty, He Newell remained in her seat, her fingers tracing the warning symbols on her tablet. An aide approached her cautiously. "Counselor, the session is over." "Yes," He Newell replied distantly, her eyes still on the holographic image of Earth floating in the chamber's center. "But I fear something else is just beginning. The last time we ignored warnings this specific, we lost an entire fleet. The humans, there's something about them we're missing. Something important." But her words fell on empty air. The other council members had already left, eager to begin preparations for what they saw as an easy conquest. The invasion fleet would launch, carrying the might of the Concordat to Earth, and only time would tell if He Newell's fears were justified. Deep within the lunar crust, beneath kilometers of rock and specially designed shielding, Captain Du Yun stood in the heart of humanity's most closely guarded secret. The command center of Moonbase Alpha stretched before him, its walls lined with technology that would make the approaching Concordat fleet's equipment look primitive by comparison. Through the quantum imaging displays, he watched the alien vessels settle into Earth orbit. They were impressive ships, he had to admit, each one nearly 5 kilometers long, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive silver-blue metal the Concordat favored. They arranged themselves in a standard attack formation, just as the ancient records had predicted they would. "Quantum defense grid is at full power," Dr. G.A. reported from her station, her fingers dancing over holographic controls that responded to her thoughts as much as her touch. "All sections report ready. The aliens haven't detected anything. Their scans are bouncing off our fake readings exactly as planned." Du Yun nodded, allowing himself a small smile. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this moment, ever since the precursors had chosen Earth as their legacy. The fake technology scattered across Earth and Mars had fooled the Concordat completely. They saw exactly what humans wanted them to see: a young, struggling civilization barely able to reach their own moon. The main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The Concordat's message was exactly what they had expected: arrogant, demanding, and completely unaware of the trap they had walked into. "People of Earth," the alien commander's voice boomed, translated perfectly by systems far more advanced than the Concordat could imagine. "Your primitive civilization has been chosen to join the Galactic Concordat. Surrender your world immediately or face complete annihilation. You have no weapons that can harm us. Resistance would only result in unnecessary deaths." Du Yun exchanged glances with G.I. The doctor's eyes sparkled with barely contained amusement. The Concordat's scans showed Earth's military scrambling in panic, launching obsolete jets and missiles, all carefully choreographed responses designed to reinforce the illusion of a frightened, primitive species. "Sir," a young operator called out, "President Min Seo is ready to transmit our response." "Put it through," Du Yun ordered, settling back to watch the show. President Min Seo's voice carried the perfect blend of fear and dignity as it was broadcast globally and to the alien fleet. We request 24 hours to prepare our response. Please, we need time to consult with all Earth's nations." The command center fell silent as they waited for the Concordat's reply. Seconds ticked by, marked by the soft pulsing of quantum monitors. Du Yun used the time to check the status of humanity's real defenses. Quantum weapon platforms hidden in dimensional pockets around the solar system showed green across the board. The gravity manipulation grid was fully charged. Biosynthetic combat units waited in their stasis chambers, ready for deployment. "They're responding," Jai announced, her hand steady on the controls despite her excitement. The alien commander's voice held smug amusement. "Very well. You have 24 hours to prepare your surrender. Use this time wisely. Any attempt to attack our ships will result in immediate retaliation." As the transmission ended, activity in the command center increased. Personnel moved with purpose, each following protocols that had been refined over generations. Through other quantum feeds, Du Yun watched similar scenes playing out in hidden bases across the solar system. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered calmly. "Start feeding them the false defense preparations. Let them think we're desperately trying to mount some kind of resistance." GA nodded and began transmitting carefully crafted data streams that would appear to be leaked military communications. The Concordat's intelligence officers would intercept them, thinking they had discovered valuable information about Earth's defenses. Every piece of data would reinforce their belief in humanity's technological inferiority. "Message from Deep Space Watch," an operator reported. "The second Concordat battle group is approaching exactly where we predicted. They're trying to be stealthy." Du Yun allowed himself another smile. The Concordat was following their standard invasion playbook perfectly. They would position their reinforcements just outside the solar system, ready to swoop in if Earth somehow managed to damage the first wave of ships. "How many ships in total?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. 342, sir. Exactly as the precursor records indicated they would send against a Category 4 civilization. The next 24 hours would be crucial. The Concordat would watch Earth carefully, expecting to see panic and futile preparation. Instead, they would see exactly what humanity wanted them to see: a frightened primitive species trying desperately to mount some kind of defense with their limited technology. Du Yun touched the ancient symbol he wore on his uniform, a gift from the precursors to humanity's first space explorers. "Begin the countdown," he ordered. "When those 24 hours are up, we'll show the Concordat exactly why the precursors chose us as their heirs." The 24-hour deadline ticked away on the Eternal Dawn's main chronometer. Commander Sunma stood at her station, watching Earth's pitiful defensive preparations with a mixture of pity and boredom. The humans had spent their time launching more primitive satellites and moving their naval vessels into defensive positions, all useless against Concordat technology. "Begin the final countdown," High Admiral Taiho ordered from his command chair. "Prepare to demonstrate our power. Target their largest military installations first." The bridge crew worked efficiently, programming targeting solutions for their energy weapons. The humans' deadline would expire in less than 5 minutes, and then... "Sir," the sensor operator's voice cracked with sudden alarm. "Something's happening. I'm detecting energy signatures everywhere." Sun's console erupted with warnings. Where empty space had existed moments before, thousands of ships were suddenly appearing. They emerged from what looked like tears in reality itself, sleek vessels that made the Concordat's proudest ships look crude in comparison. "Impossible," Taiho whispered, rising from his chair. "Where did they come from? How did we not detect them?" Before anyone could respond, new readings flooded their sensors. The human ships were powering up weapon systems unlike anything the Concordat had ever encountered. Energy patterns that defied their understanding rippled through space. "Evasive action," Sunmei shouted, but it was too late. The first wave of human attacks struck the Concordat fleet with devastating precision. Beams of twisted gravity tore through their strongest shields as if they didn't exist. Ships that had survived centuries of warfare were ripped apart in seconds. "Return fire," Taiho ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. The Eternal Dawn's weapons blazed, launching their most powerful energy attacks at the human vessels. The shots passed harmlessly through advanced shielding technology that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around the human ships. Their defensive systems didn't just block attacks, they redirected them into some unknown dimension. "Sir, we've lost contact with the entire 3rd Squadron," a communications officer reported, panic evident in his voice. "The humans are using some kind of quantum field technology. Nothing in our database matches these readings." Sun Mai watched in horror as another wave of human ships emerged, these carrying what appeared to be biological weapons platforms. Massive constructs that seemed to be part machine, part living tissue, moved with impossible speed through the Concordat formation. "This is Fleet Admiral Hai Jin of the Earth Defense Force," a calm voice suddenly announced over all frequencies, speaking perfect Concordat language. "We gave you the chance to leave. You should have heeded the warnings about this system." Taeho gripped his command chair as the Eternal Dawn shuddered under another attack. You were primitive. We saw your technology level. Our scans confirmed it. "We showed you what we wanted you to see," Hai-Jin replied, and Sunmei could hear the smile in her voice. "Those primitive satellites, decoys, those basic ships, props. We've had quantum technology for centuries, given to us by those you call the precursors." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as more human ships appeared. They moved in patterns that suggested perfect coordination, their attacks synchronized with mathematical precision. Each strike targeted a specific weakness in Concordat ship design, weaknesses they shouldn't have known about. "Sir," Sun Mai reported, her voice shaking, "we've lost 60% of the fleet. The humans are using some kind of targeted gravity distortion. They're literally tearing our ships apart at the atomic level." The Eternal Dawn systems began failing one by one. Emergency lights flashed as power fluctuated throughout the massive vessel. Through the view screens, Sunmai could see human ships surrounding them in a perfect sphere formation. A final warning. Admiral Hai-Jin's voice came again. "Your remaining ships have 30 seconds to engage their fastest drives and leave this system. After that, we will assume you choose to continue fighting." Taiho stood in the center of his failing bridge, his golden uniform now stained with smoke from damaged consoles. "How?" he demanded. "How did you hide all this?" "The same way we've hidden for centuries," Hai-Jin replied. "The precursors didn't vanish. They found us, a species with potential. They taught us, guided us, and then merged their consciousness with ours. We are their children, their legacy. And you just invaded our home." Sun Mai watched the countdown appear on her screen. They had 20 seconds left to retreat. Around them, the few surviving Concordat ships were already turning, their engines glowing as they prepared for emergency jumps. "Admiral," she said quietly to Taiho, "we need to leave. Now." Taiho stared at the image of Earth floating serenely on the main screen, surrounded by its ring of advanced defense platforms that had been invisible just hours ago. His empire's greatest fleet had just been decimated by a species they had considered primitive. "Send the retreat signal," he finally ordered as the countdown reached 10 seconds. "All ships, emergency jump protocols, and send a message to the Council. The warnings were right. The humans, they're not what we thought they were." The Eternal Dawn's engines screamed as they engaged, carrying the defeated flagship away from Earth. Behind them, the human fleet maintained their perfect formation, a silent reminder of how badly the Concordat had underestimated their opponent. Miles beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, an ancient chamber hummed with power that predated human civilization. Its crystalline walls pulsed with soft blue light, illuminating intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move when viewed directly. Si-Jin led the group of captured Concordat officers through the vast space, their footsteps echoing on floors made of material that had yet to be discovered by most galactic civilizations. The prisoners walked in stunned silence, their once proud uniforms now wrinkled and stained. Among them was Commander Sunmai, her eyes wide as she took in technology that shouldn't exist on what they had believed was a primitive world. "This facility was built 50,000 years ago," Se-Jin explained, his voice carrying easily in the perfect acoustics of the chamber. long before humans had even learned to write. The precursors found us when we were still hunting with stone tools. He approached a central control panel that seemed to grow from the floor itself. With a series of gentle touches, he activated the chamber's holographic systems. The air above them erupted with images. Scenes from Earth's true history played out in perfect, three-dimensional detail. The first images showed early humans struggling to survive in Africa's harsh environments. Then came the arrival. Massive ships descending from the skies, their design unlike anything the Concordat had ever seen. But instead of conquest, the scenes showed something unexpected. Teaching, guidance, careful observation. They watched us for thousands of years, Seijin continued, moving through the historical record. They saw how we adapted to every challenge our world presented. How we used tools, made fire, developed language. They saw potential in us that they hadn't found in any other species. Sun Mei stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her status as a prisoner. But our scans, we saw your development timeline. Stone tools to spaceflight in a natural progression. How did you hide all this? Seijin smiled and adjusted the display. New images appeared, showing vast underground cities, advanced laboratories, and training facilities, all hidden from surface detection. The precursors taught us patience along with technology. They showed us how to maintain two civilizations, the surface one that everyone could see, progressing at a believable rate, and the real one, hidden beneath. The hologram shifted again, showing scenes that made the Concordat officers gasp. Humans working alongside precursors, learning to manipulate quantum fields, to bend gravity, to merge biology with technology. The images showed centuries of secret advancement, all while maintaining the careful illusion of a slowly developing species above ground. They chose us, Seijin explained to his stunned audience. They saw in us what you ignored: adaptability, creativity, and an unrelenting drive to survive. They didn't conquer us. They became our teachers. And eventually, they became part of us. To demonstrate, he held up his hand. His skin seemed to shimmer, revealing complex patterns of light that ran through his body like circuitry. Every human now carries precursor DNA, enhanced by their technology. We're not just their students anymore. We're their children, their legacy. One of the Concordat officers, a young lieutenant, found his voice. But why? Why hide all this? Why maintain the deception? Seijin gestured, and the holographic display showed the galaxy with its various empires and species. Because of this, because empires like yours see advanced technology as something to be conquered or destroyed. The precursors taught us that true power lies not in showing strength, but in choosing when to reveal it. The images now showed the warning markers the precursors had left throughout the galaxy. Every warning you ignored was placed there by them, knowing that someday someone would test us. They wanted to give others a chance to choose wisdom over conquest. Sun Me stepped closer to one of the holograms, studying the complex equations that floated in the air. This is beyond anything we have. Your weapons, your defenses, they're not just more advanced, they're operating on principles we don't even understand. Because you chose to stop learning. Seijin replied gently. Your empire became focused on conquest rather than discovery. The precursors saw that pattern repeated throughout the galaxy. That's why they searched for a species that could break that cycle. He waved his hand, and the chamber filled with images of human achievements, not the fake ones shown to the galaxy, but their real accomplishments. Cities that existed in multiple dimensions, ships that could traverse galaxies in moments, medical technology that had effectively conquered death itself. We're showing you this, Seijin concluded, because you need to understand what happens next. We're not interested in revenge or conquest. Like our teachers, we want to break the cycle. We're offering your people a choice. Continue as you are and face extinction, or join us in learning, in growing, in becoming something greater than an empire. The chamber fell silent as the holograms faded, leaving only the soft pulse of the ancient walls. The Concordat officers looked at each other, then back at Seijin, their worldview shattered by what they had learned. Their empire, which had seemed invincible just days ago, now appeared primitive compared to what humanity had hidden beneath the waves. The crystal spires of the Concordat capital world reflected the light of 3 suns, but today their beauty was overshadowed by chaos. Streets that had known only order for millennia, now filled with protesters from 100 different species. In the Grand Council chamber, Defense Minister Yanji stood before her peers, her once confident posture now weighted with defeat. 17 systems have declared independence in the last 6 hours, she reported, her voice strained. Our attempts to suppress the rebellions have failed. The subject worlds they're using human technology. The council chamber erupted in angry shouts and accusations. Centuries of carefully maintained control were unraveling in days. On the massive displays surrounding them, reports continued to stream in. Concordat fleets retreating from battles, colonial governors surrendering to their former subjects, trade routes collapsing. How? Demanded an elderly council member, his scaled skin flushed with anger. How did these primitive worlds acquire such weapons? Before Yanji could respond, the chamber's main doors slid open. Ambassador Wu Jin walked in, his simple white uniform standing in stark contrast to the ornate dress of the council members. He moved with quiet confidence, seemingly unbothered by the hundreds of hostile eyes fixed upon him. They didn't acquire weapons, Wu Jin stated, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. We gave them knowledge. There's a difference, one your empire never understood. Counselor He Newell, still clutching her ancient tablet, leaned forward. You armed our subjects against us. No, Wu Jin replied, activating a small device he carried. Holographic images filled the chamber, showing scenes from various rebel worlds. But instead of weapons, they showed teaching centers, laboratories, and schools. We showed them how to learn, how to grow, how to build their own future, just as the precursors did for us. Yanji's face flushed with rage. You had no right. These worlds belong to the Concordat. Worlds don't belong to empires, Wu Jin said calmly. People don't belong to empires. Your empire is built on subjugation. Ours was built on cooperation with our teachers. Which do you think is stronger? The display shifted, showing more scenes from across Concordat space. Former subject species working together, sharing knowledge, advancing faster than centuries of imperial rule had allowed. Their progress wasn't marked by conquest, but by discovery. Look at what your people have achieved in just days of freedom, Wu Jin continued. Imagine what they could have done with centuries of proper guidance instead of oppression. A younger council member stood up. And what do you want in return for this? Guidance? What tribute do you demand? Wu Jin actually smiled at this. You still think in terms of tribute and demands. We want partners, not subjects. Students, not slaves. The precursors taught us that true power comes from lifting others up, not holding them down. The chamber fell silent as a new hologram appeared. A complete map of known space, with the Concordat's territory highlighted. Points of light showed where rebellion had already succeeded, spreading like stars being born. You have a choice, Wu Jin announced. Continue fighting a war you cannot win, watching your empire crumble world by world. Or join us. Learn what the precursors taught us, that the greatest strength comes from working together, from sharing knowledge rather than hoarding it. Yanji stepped forward, her voice shaking with emotion. And if we refuse, will you destroy us like you destroyed our fleet? No, Wu Jin replied simply. We will watch as your own people choose freedom over fear. Your empire is already falling, Minister Yanji. The only question is whether you will fall with it or help build something better in its place. He gestured, and new images appeared. Designs for technology beyond anything the Concordat had ever seen. This is just the beginning of what we can teach you. Not weapons or tools of control, but knowledge that could transform every world in your empire into a paradise. The council members looked at each other, centuries of tradition warring with the undeniable reality before them. Their mighty empire, which had ruled through force for millennia, was being defeated not by superior weapons, but by superior ideas. The choice, Wu Jin concluded, is yours. But choose quickly. Your people have already decided they want something better than an empire. The only question is whether you will help lead them there or be left behind in the ruins of your old order. The silence that followed his words was broken only by the continuous stream of reports. More systems declaring independence, more fleets standing down, more worlds choosing knowledge over conquest. The age of the Concordat was ending, not with a battle, but with a lesson. The Grand Assembly Hall of the new Galactic Federation sparkled under the light of 1,000 stars, visible through its transparent dome. Unlike the old Concordat chambers, which had been designed to intimidate, this space celebrated unity and equality. Representatives from over 500 worlds sat together, not in hierarchical ranks, but in a great circle where everyone could see and be heard by all. Chancellor Taiho adjusted his simple white uniform, so different from the golden attire he had worn as a Concordat admiral 5 years ago. Standing beside him, President Min Seo smiled as they watched the hall fill with delegates from across the galaxy. Former enemies sat together, sharing knowledge and ideas instead of threats and demands. Did you ever imagine this? Min Seo asked quietly, watching a group of former Concordat worlds chatting animatedly with representatives from Earth's oldest allies. Never, Taiho admitted. When we first entered Earth's system, I thought we were gods coming to lift up primitives. Instead, you taught us what true advancement looks like. Above them, the ancient warning that had once been ignored now held pride of place, its letters seeming to glow with their own inner light. Here grow the children of Earth, taught by those who came before. Their power lies not in their weapons, but in their ability to learn, adapt, and grow. Treat them as equals, and they will lift you to the stars. Treat them as subjects, and learn why we chose them above all others. The assembly hall fell quiet as Min Seo stepped forward to address the gathered representatives. Behind her, holographic displays showed the incredible progress made in just 5 years. Worlds that had once been resource-stripped colonies now bloomed with life and technology. Former slave species had become leaders in science and art. Look around you, Min Seo began, her voice carrying easily through the perfect acoustics. 5 years ago, we were enemies. The Concordats sought to conquer Earth, thinking us primitive. We could have responded with destruction. Instead, we chose to follow our teacher's path, to share knowledge, to lift up rather than strike down. She gestured and new holograms appeared, showing the future projects already underway. Massive engineering works to heal damaged planets, research stations probing the mysteries of the universe, and schools where 100 species learn together. The precursors chose humanity not because we were strongest or smartest, she continued, but because they saw in us the capacity to learn, to grow, and most importantly, to teach others. They became our teachers, then our partners, and finally part of us. Now we offer the same path to all. Taiho stepped forward to join her. As someone who once sought to conquer Earth, I can testify to the wisdom of this new way. My people thought ourselves superior, yet in 5 years of learning from humans and their knowledge, we have advanced more than in 5 centuries of empire. The hall erupted in appreciative applause. Species that had once been mortal enemies now worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old order. The age of conquest was truly over, replaced by an era of shared discovery and growth. The choice we offer today is the same one the precursors offered us. Min Seo declared, not submission, but partnership, not control, but cooperation. The age of empire is over. The age of cooperation begins. As her words echoed through the chamber, the assembled representatives rose in unanimous support. The great dome above them showed the stars, no longer distant points to be conquered, but a vast frontier of discovery waiting to be explored together. The ancient warning glowed brighter, its message no longer a threat but a promise. Humanity had proved worthy of their teacher's trust, not by conquering the galaxy, but by showing it a better way. The children of Earth had grown up, and now they would help others do the same. In that moment, as representatives from hundreds of worlds stood together under the stars, the last vestiges of the old empire faded away. The future belonged not to those who could dominate, but to those who could learn, teach, and grow together. The story of humanity's first contact with the Concordat had ended not in destruction, but in transformation, and as the assembly began its work, the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, welcoming a new age of discovery and cooperation that would change the galaxy forever.